You're stranded, restricted of movement, and starving for a full month. This was the situation we first see Roronoa Zoro in. The first time we see him, he's portrayed as a bad guy, like a ruthless bounty hunter. It's not long after until we find out that he was the one who submitted himself into that position, taking whatever punishment he had to take in order to protect the town being oppressed by the Navy. He accepts the public shaming and physical abuse without a single complaint. To Zoro, reputation and abuse don't matter. He doesn't try to explain why he's there in order to gain sympathy points. He doesn't shout motivational shonen one-liners. He's fully willing to carry the burden, not tell anyone, and overcome his hardships. He doesn't care if anyone knows. He's doing what is right simply because it is what is right. Stoicism is an ancient Greek school of philosophy. The school of thought has been simplified over the years to mean the endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint. Stoicism is willfully taking up your cross with no one to help you and not telling anyone. It's unwavering loyalty and steadfast leadership. This is what we call dignity. These stoic qualities, along with his strength, are why people often assume he is the captain of the Straw Hats. Holding a burden without any sign of weakness is what gives a crew something to look up to. Zoro was likely inspired by the Japanese way of samurai known as Bushido. Bushido is the samurai's moral values. Bushido is most commonly described as some combination of sincerity, frugality, loyalty, martial arts mastery, and honor until death. As the future pirate king, Luffy needs someone who can match him on the battlefield. Luffy is the actual captain, and I've talked about why that's important in a very old video of mine, but under different circumstances, Zoro could be an effective captain in his own way. As the unofficial vice captain, Zoro doesn't ever question Luffy's decisions. He only steps in to point out the seriousness of the situation. Most notably, when Luffy wanted to bring Usopp back into the crew after Usopp challenged Luffy to a duel for the Going Merry and lost, Zoro disapproved, even willing to quit the crew himself if Luffy brushed the incident off and treated it as if it were another joke. Stoicism is self-sacrifice and the mastery of oneself. Regardless of if you believe this is something we ought to celebrate, or if you believe this is something that encourages us to not open up about our problems, there is something we find innately appealing about it. There's something macho and respectful about perseverance and loyalty without wanting recognition. The willingness to risk your life to save someone you barely know. It takes a strong sense of morality to so swiftly and sacrificially give yourself up to people you don't know because they're being oppressed by a power stronger than them. Zoro understands that power ought not to be used to oppress those weaker than you, but instead used to protect those weaker than you from the forces of nature. In his battle against Mr. One, his haki bloomed. Not because he was fighting for the sake of fighting, but because he was fighting with intention. He understood that not everything ought to be cut. A gentle palm tree is innocent, but an enemy like Mr. One is a threat. Power is intentional, not unhinged. Power is meant to protect, not senselessly destroy. It's because of this that we see Zoro strongly detest evil individuals who exhibit extreme cruelty towards the innocent. When the Celestial Dragon shot Hachan, Zoro was silently wrathful as he fully intended to cut down the World Noble if it weren't for Luffy. When Zoro is fighting weaker opponents, he will often use the dull side of his blade as to make the opponent acknowledge his superiority while also not hurting them too much as to severely injure them. He understands the importance of restraint. This type of bravery, courage, and masculinity is seen in the powerful men of today who sacrifice their life working as firefighters and soldiers. This all culminates into what is my favorite scene of all of anime, Zoro's "Nothing Happened." This scene comes off the heels of the Straw Hats' combined effort to take down the zombie Oars. Luffy is knocked out from the intense fight and the rest of the characters are resting. Kuma suddenly appears on the island to inform Moria that Blackbeard will replace Crocodile as a warlord and that Ace had been captured by Blackbeard. However, Kuma receives new orders. He's now ordered to capture the crew and kill the remaining witnesses as to not have the information of Moria's defeat leak elsewhere. Zoro prepares to fight and mentions how he would be willing to die for the crew if need be. When they fight, Kuma easily counters all of Zoro's attacks. Kuma decided to spare everyone by creating a pressurized air bomb, knocking everyone out in hopes of bringing just Luffy's head back to the government. Zoro, however, was still conscious and slashed him with a surprise attack. As the battle ensues, Zoro is bleeding and panting, barely able to stand. Understanding the fight was not his to win, he offers himself up instead of Luffy as compensation. Before Kuma could answer, Sanji steps in, barely conscious, not able to walk, and offers his life to ensure Luffy and Zoro's dreams are fulfilled. Zoro had already made up his mind, however, and knocked Sanji out. To truly test Zoro's resolve, Kuma expels all of Luffy's pain and gives a portion of it to Zoro, showing just how much pain Luffy goes through every arc to protect his crew. Even a small dose of it inflicts serious pain to Zoro. Kuma tells Zoro that if he were to take all of it, especially in his current condition, that he would die. Zoro is still resolute and takes all of Luffy's pain without a second thought. Kuma acknowledges Luffy's crew and leaves. Regaining consciousness, Sanji wakes up and finds Zoro standing in the middle of a collection of debris painted in blood. Upon asking Zoro what happened, he just says, "Nothing happened." Zoro took all of Luffy's pain, nearly killed himself saving the crew, and didn't want any acknowledgement. Especially now, we're all trending towards the direction of sharing every struggle. We're constantly talking about our stress and our anxiety. People are talking about how busy they are, how tired they are, and how stressed they are. Zoro does none of this. He voluntarily shoulders the burden, being in anguish and not sharing any of it, replying with nothing more than "nothing happened." I think we should apply some of this into our own life. He took the sacrifice with love and honor, believing wholeheartedly in Luffy and the crew without demanding acknowledgement. In other words, Zoro feels called to be stressed, to have struggle, to go through pain, and to shut up and deal with it. This is what separates Zoro's swordsmanship from someone like Mihawk. When the story is over, Zoro will be a different greatest swordsman than Mihawk because he believes in his crew. He's fighting for something beyond himself. He ultimately trusts in the will and the fate of his captain, so in the end, whatever happens, he'll be content. Jeffrey Bartzel, in his book Speculative Language and Stoic Language Theory in the Medieval Allegorical Language, states that Stoics believe all things are bound together through a complex and interconnected network of causes. Part of the reason Zoro doesn't complain is because, like other characters in the series, he believes in fate. His time will come when it comes. This is perhaps the most extreme example of Stoicism, and that, I think, is exactly why it's so beloved. There are other characters who do similar things, such as Luffy in Impel Down and Marineford, where he surely does sacrifice a lot, but Zoro does it quietly, never bringing too much attention to himself. And that's what separates Zoro's sacrifice from everyone else. He doesn't say any more than 2 words. There was a time where Zoro cried after we met him. It was after losing to Mihawk and promising Luffy he would never lose again. His goal was right in sight, but at the same time he had to acknowledge just how far away it was. That's difficult for someone so determined to accept. But as a swordsman, he understands he has to push through it. There's nothing wrong with showing weakness as long as you grow from it, work through the emotion, and come back stronger next time. And this is what Zoro vowed to do. He tells Luffy that he will never lose another fight. To be the strongest swordsman, you're going to need mental fortitude. You need to be strong in your body and mind. On that note, for one to be as strong as possible, one must first master the self. If one can master their own desires, one can liberate the self from distractions. It makes you collected, calculated, and in complete control of yourself. Aristotle said, "I count him braver who overcomes his desires than him who conquers his enemies." The hardest battle is one fought with the self. Stoicism does not mean not feeling. That's a common misconception. Everyone still has feelings. Stoicism is just accepting those feelings and knowing you don't have to be a slave to them. Zoro was a heavy drinker. He would drink every time he had the chance. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was an addiction of his, but it was something Mihawk felt was limiting his potential. If one does not overcome the self, how can they overcome the enemy? And that's why Zoro giving up alcohol was important to me. Despite the critique Zoro gets after the time skip for emoting less, I believe this is why Oda has written Zoro the way he is. Someone who is so determined on his goal, someone who is so undeterred by anything that it makes sense that he would naturally emote less. In Wano, Zoro has opened up a little bit more. For a little bit, I did feel like he was a little bit too closed off. I think now Oda is starting to balance badass stoicism and open fun. Regardless, I think a vice captain and leader like Zoro has to carry pain, stress, tiredness, be fed up, exhausted, and not show it. To carry it with dignity. There still are times when Zoro would get a break, but there was never a moment where you would hear Zoro complain. He never feels the need to vent nor shout his goals. He carries that quiet dignity and quiet strength. On a more superficial level, Oda has a knack for making things as over the top as possible, whether that be his character designs, the powers he creates, or the lengths of his stories. With that in mind, it's clear that Oda tried to make Zoro's design as badass as possible, similar to characters like Ace, Crocodile, and Katakuri. It's why Zoro uses 3 swords with one in his mouth. It sounds silly on paper, but in practice it makes his fighting style unique from any other character, and also looks really cool. It's why he's extremely muscular and has an excessive number of scars, including one on his left eye which no one has yet to even acknowledge. That scar in particular adds an aura of mystique around his character. There's theories everywhere, but the most popular one is that he's hiding some latent demonic power. This all adds to his appeal to me. I know this isn't confirmed yet, but with how the theories are making it sounds like everyone knows that he has some sort of demonic power, and no one dares to even mention it. He's containing all that power within himself, and of course not telling anyone. That sounds bad as hell. His presence alone has intimidated people, so this would actually be appropriate. Zoro is also always training. As someone who's always training myself, this just adds more to his appeal. In general, you could actually apply a lot of what I said about Zoro here to myself, so I will admit that there is a lot of personal bias. All in all, a thick-skinned pirate hunter with unwavering loyalty, an iconic design, fighting style, and intimidating demonic aura is what Zoro is to me. All of this is why Zoro is my favorite character in all of fiction. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Most of you aren't subscribed, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.